Hi, Analisa Six here with the Lady of Leisure and the Sober Curator to bring you the May 2023 horoscope for the Sun and Rising sign of Cancer. It is a new month already, and I can't believe it. I am super weirded out that it's already the 5th month of the year. I feel like this year is going by a lot faster than it started out now that we're rolling. Okay, so let's get into it. So we're currently dealing with a Mercury retrograde in the fixed Earth sign of Taurus. And the area that this is impacting the Cancer horoscope chart has to do with the area that rules our relationship to friendship circles, groups, political organizations, any kind of group activity that we're associating ourselves with. This house is highlighted. So what that means, having this house highlighted, because we have the sun here, we have the north node here, we have Mercury retrograde here, we have Uranus here, and we have the asteroid Vesta here. Basically, everything that I just said about that house is highlighted, and there's a lot of energy happening here. There's kind of like a big light shown on that area. So if you've been very social, if you've been networking a lot, if you've been working with a lot of groups of people, that's highlighted. Having Mercury retrograde here brings some conflict or discrepancies to some of the social planning or ways that you're communicating with a group or a collective. And so if you've been having some interpersonal dynamics with some people within a certain group that have been challenging, you can thank Mercury retrograde for that. And Mercury is going to be retrograde until the evening of the 14th. And then we're going to have another week of the shadow period. So May still, there's some communication stuff. And again, it's happening in groups. So, Mercury retrograde, it's about reflecting and reviewing on the area that it's highlighting. And so you might be reflecting and reviewing your social circles or any groups that you associate with, and also your relationship to the collective energy. How is that impacting you? How are you a part of it? Another energy that we have starting out the month is Venus in Gemini. And Venus is not going to be in Gemini for much longer. It's the 4th right now, and she enters Cancer, your sign, on the 7th. But we've got this last little bit of Gemini where she's been over the last month. And, since April of, I think it looks like April 10th-ish is when she entered Gemini. So we've had her, a little less than a month in Gemini. And that area has been influencing the house that rules your subconscious. And so working through healing things around the subconscious. And it's creative. There's a lot of creative energy here too. Reflecting on our relationships to the past, can be something that comes up too. But when she enters Cancer, on the 7th, she enters the area of the chart that impacts your relationship to yourself, your relationship to your identity. This is a really positive time when Venus is passing through this area where we heal maybe some issues around self-acceptance, self-love. It's also a positive time to, do beautifying rituals, anything that makes us feel beautiful within ourselves. And self-care is really positive. We've already had Mars passing through this area, which is more volatile. It's more, there's more conflict with the planet Mars, but there's also a drive towards our will in terms of ambition and what we want to do in terms of inserting our will into our lives. But if we've been kind of in a little bit of an internal fight with our sense of self or our identity, or we've been reflecting kind of on who we are versus who these people are and whether we're in alignment in these ways, Venus coming into Cancer should kind of help ease some of that tension that maybe you've been feeling and make you feel more empowered to take the reins on your own life and prioritize yourself. Cancer has a need to be needed. And so there's kind of this, there can be a little bit of a martyr dynamic that happens with Cancer where, you're such a giving sign. You're the mother of the zodiac, you're the kind of nurturer of the zodiac. And so you do that for everybody around you. But, if it's not coming back your way, then you can get resentful and depleted. I think we talk about this a lot, usually during your horoscope, because it's just you, like you're wired that way. But Venus coming into this area of the self, you might start to feel more, Mars has already been here, so you've probably already been feeling this way, but Venus is here really amplifying it in a positive way to prioritize yourself, filling your own cup, doing things for yourself and not feeling bad about it. And you have plenty of energy highlighting other people still, so it's probably helping to balance you out more, having Venus come into this area. Tomorrow is the 5th, and tomorrow we have a lunar eclipse at 14 degrees of Scorpio. And Scorpio makes what's called a trine to Cancer because it's the fixed water sign of the zodiac. Cancer is the cardinal water sign, and water likes water. It makes a trine to each other. And so there's an easy flow of energy. But, eclipses are intense. There's usually a big change or some kind of awareness that we have around something where we feel a shift of energy. Whether there's like an actual hard change is dependent on the placement in your personal chart. But either way, we might feel a lot of intense energy and there's a shift happening in some kind of way. The area that it's hitting for the Cancer horoscope has to do with our so again, we've got that Taurus emphasis where the sun is, and then the opposite of that is our creative expression. And so there's the influence of the group and the groups that we were associated with, and then where the moon is an emphasis of creative expression and who we are and how we express ourselves. There's a big emphasis on that in terms of maybe there was a past identity around the way in which you presented or expressed yourself creatively, and maybe you're moving away from a past self in that, and you're seeing something else kind of wanting to emerge based off of the direction that you're moving in now. So if you've been reflecting a lot on, this is going to sound cheesy, but if you're somebody that reflects a lot on brand identity, or not necessarily your brand, but the brand of other people, or let's say that you're in a position where you're a very creative, artistic person, and you've been contemplating moving in a different direction with your art, this eclipse might be kind of the catalyst where you start to feel ready to do that, where you're like, I am ready to shift into this new space with what I'm doing and how I express it. So that's emphasized tomorrow on the 5th. And then what happens during an eclipse is we feel kind of this like crack open or shift of energy, but then there's this ripple effect over the next few months of the action that kind of happens. So we might feel the crack open of like, I'm ready for this. And then it's kind of this, what do I need to do to make it happen? Or how is the story kind of unfolding until the next eclipse or whatever. So your self-expression, creativity, and the groups you associate with and the way you network within those groups is highlighted for the Cancer horoscope. We have a lot of water energy that's getting emphasized through the middle of March because we are going to have the Venus in Cancer, which will happen for the rest of the month, which is great for you. And then we're going to have Mars in Cancer until the 21st, and then it's going to enter Leo. And then Saturn and Neptune are both in Pisces. And Neptune's been in Pisces forever. Saturn's going to be in Pisces for a while. But there's a lot of energy with Venus, Mars, and Mercury all making these kind of aspects to these things. And so as those aspects are happening, we get this elevated energy in the houses where you have the water element. And so those houses have to do with your identity and your sense of self, your creative expression, how you find joy in your life, even the way that you are romantic about life, the way that you want to experience romance and kind of more connection through self-expression. And then another area is your spirituality and your belief systems, and also education, your education and how you evolve either as a teacher or a student is also highlighted right now with the planets hitting those things. And so this is a really good time for personal growth and for also learning things from other people and teaching other people about the things that you know. So if you're feeling inclined to take classes or teach classes, that's supported during the month of May. But because Mercury is retrograde, you might deal with some communication discrepancies with technology or information not going quite the way that you had intended. And Mercury will station direct at the end of the day on the 14th. I think it's in the evening. So once we get out of the shadow period, which should be around the 22nd, we will kind of start to be more in this position of feeling like we're starting to feel more grounded around some of the tech issues or communication issues or things that maybe we've been having. And so we might feel like, okay, we're starting to see this take form more. Jupiter is going to be entering the Taurus party right after on the 16th. And so we'll have Mercury station direct, and then Jupiter is going to enter that Taurus party. So Jupiter will be finishing up its time in Aries, which has been the area that's influenced your career and your work. And so you've been really working on growing and expanding the work that you're doing in the world with Jupiter and Aries over the last few months. And now that it's moving into Taurus, it's moving into that social area. So again, there's a lot of amplification around your social life and the groups that you're associated with. So, you know, if you're starting to meet new people, you're starting to want to expand your role in your community, that's also highlighted and it's supported. Jupiter's going to be here for the rest of the year. You're going to have Jupiter influencing this social area for that long. Mars is going to move into Leo on the 21st. And before that, we have a new moon in Taurus on the 19th. So on May 19th, we're going to have a new moon at 28 degrees Taurus. And again, that's the area of groups and friendship circles. And so if there's, you know, sometimes, okay, so I had a lesson years ago as an astrologer, actually, and tarot reader, where I felt like there was this glass ceiling that I needed to break. And it was my ego mostly because, you know, there's a lot of astrologers in the astrology community that have thousands of followers, thousands of views on their videos. They've written books, you know, and I was watching people my age who had been doing astrology not that much longer than me reach these milestones, right? And at the time I had more, you know, I had a different account and I had around 4,000 followers. And I was watching these other astrologers kind of build this momentum, and you know, I just wasn't getting it. My content wasn't getting it. I'm not really somebody that likes creating content in a way that generates more of that attention. I'm one of those people where like authenticity and integrity overrides success, and it gets in the way of my success quite a bit because I get really conflicted about ethics and morals and integrity and things like that. And I'm not saying other astrologers don't. I'm just saying that like I overthink whether or not I think something is in line with my values or my beliefs, and it makes me sometimes just do nothing instead of something because I'm so apprehensive to contribute to this world in a shitty way or a negative way. And not saying that I would, but just like it's one of those fears of mine. And I'm also hyper, you know, like a lot of astrologers, I think when astrology was getting really popular again, really relied on meme culture to boost their activity on Instagram. And at the time, I did not like that. I felt like it was very fast food astrology, you know. But the thing that's funny is I actually really enjoy astrology memes, but I didn't want to be one of those people creating that content, even though I like it, even though at the time I was kind of annoyed by it, but you know, I enjoy it now. I enjoy comic relief and things like that, but I was super judgmental of it. And it kind of went against the sacred part of the spirituality to me. Like it was kind of dumbing it down to me the same way I feel about horoscopes. Like I felt like horoscopes were dumbing it down, and they are, but it's still fun, you know, like there's a balance, right? Like you can have fun and be serious. It doesn't have to be either or, you know, and I get in the way of that, you know, sometimes with myself. But I had this idea of this glass ceiling, you know. I was like, until I get accepted by my peers or my colleagues as an astrologer or a tarot reader in this way, like I'm not legitimate, you know, like there's this glass ceiling that I have to break. And there was this day where I had this epiphany that didn't actually exist. It was just like a construct of my own mind, you know, like I had the flashback to Lindsay Lohan in Mean Girls where she figured out the math problem and she was like, the limit does not exist. The limit does not exist. And I realized that I was having this limiting belief that I wasn't good at what I did, or I wouldn't be good at what I did until I like broke this glass ceiling or whatever. And if you were looking at me back then at the time, you probably would have laughed because I feel like I was getting a lot of recognition and validation by some pretty great people. So it was like, I don't know why. I mean, I do know why, because it's just what we do in our heads. But the point is that I'm making about this new moon for you is that the area it's hitting in has to do with these like social circles or social constructs or ideas. And oftentimes we have this mentality that there's a glass ceiling that we have to break in order to see what we're contributing in the world as legitimate. And nowadays there's kind of like this social popularity contest online, right? Whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, website statistics, or you know, how much money we make, or you know, whether we're in a physical office and it's about certain milestones that we're reaching in our office. We have all these glass ceilings that we're playing in, you know. And I think the biggest thing when I realized that the limit does not exist or the glass ceiling does not exist is that I my success and my happiness in the world will never be dictated by any of those things, probably. I've been taught that lesson a lot, because a lot of times I'll reach certain milestones and I still don't feel anything. And I'm like, oh, because happiness comes from within, not from reaching these milestones. Or you might reach the milestone and it feels good for a second, but then you're on to the next thing. It's kind of the way an addict is chasing a high. It's the same kind of idea. And I learned that about myself at a really young age, really, really young, but it didn't stop me from still trying to pursue goals, right? Because it's like, we're on the earth, what else are we going to do? But this new moon is kind of emphasizing, if there's a glass ceiling that you've been wanting to break, or a social circle or a community milestone that you want to break, this new moon is a really positive time for setting intentions around whatever that is. But it's also a really positive time to recognize that that's an illusion and there is no such thing. And when you're really good at what you do and you're consistent, that's what I've learned, is it's discipline and consistency and just staying on the path that actually makes you one of those people that you look up to, right? It has nothing to do with all of a sudden breaking a glass ceiling. It has to do with just staying tried and true and not wavering and not going away. At some point, you're going to be an expert in your field because you've been doing it for X amount of years, and everybody has been consistently witnessing and a part of it. And it's just, you wake up one day and you're like, oh, I've been doing this for 20 years and I kind of know what I'm talking about, and then people that know you go, yeah, you know what you're talking about. And that glass ceiling is somehow broken, right? But it's not really, because it was never there to begin with. It's just wisdom in life. It's just, if we stay consistent with something long enough, we gain enough wisdom to be recognized by people within our industry as somebody that knows what they're talking about. But that's also always changing. There's experts in the field and then they die, and 20 years later, everything they said is said to be false and they're full of shit, So I think of, the guy that invented the lobotomy, and how the first few years okay, here's a great example. You would look at the guy who invented the lobotomy, whose name I don't remember, because I just watched this on TV or something. But essentially, there's people that rise to fame in this way. We could also look at, what's her face? Elizabeth, whatever, who created Thesis or whatever, that company that ended up getting debunked. There's these people that supposedly break a glass ceiling really fast, and then people like us that don't look at that and we're just like, holy shit, why didn't I have that idea? And I think about the lobotomy guy, I think about the woman that created that fake tech company. And the lobotomy guy got published by all these scientific journals, and he was validated in his technique within like a few years, of it becoming kind of this wide known thing. I mean, I think he had been working on it for longer than a few years by the time he was doing it more widely. But, it's like, if you were another scientist watching that guy's success in the beginning, you might think, wow, this guy's really onto something. He's getting these scientific, publications validating his science and research. And then it only took a few more years before everybody realized that it was a horrible modality and that it was really destroying and damaging people, and same thing with that woman's company. She started out really strong. She ended up on Forbes, she had all this money backing her. And it's like, look at how that ended up. Like, this woman was a charlatan and nothing she said was legitimate, right? And so I look at that stuff and I'm like, is it better to start out really fast, but not really have your bearings in something, and supposedly break all these glass ceilings only to feel like an imposter, or actually be an imposter and realize that you have to backtrack and rebuild your life in this way because you didn't do it the right way? Or is it better to be quiet and humble and work really hard at something, and work really hard at your craft, and do it in a way where you can look back and actually have some integrity behind it and go, yeah, I built that and I feel pretty good about it. And I also have had to eat a lot of humble pie because I'm doing this with integrity, and I'm not like, it's not a get rich quick kind of thing, or whatever. And so I think the glass ceiling mentality is a little bit more shallow in my mind than when we just stay in our lane and hone in on something really well. And so I think that the wanting to break into certain social circles or certain areas of validity, I don't think there's anything wrong with having those goals. But I also think, in true Taurus fashion, Taurus is a sign that likes to move slowly and methodically. sometimes the slower methodical process is the process with the most benefits, the most fruit at the end of it, than the process that's the get fast and get recognized right now. Discipline, consistency, and being reliable, which are all very Taurus themes, are really great things to be recognized for in your community and social circles, because people know that they can count on you. And so I think setting those intentions around the new moon for you with where it's hitting in that community sector is really positive. I feel like that's a good place to stop for you, Cancer. Happy May. Good luck. May the 4th be with you, because that's what's happening today. And if you liked this, go ahead and hit a like. If you want to get notifications on next month's videos or any other videos I publish, please hit the subscribe and let me know in the comments what you think. If it's mean, don't let me know in the comments though, because I'm sensitive and I don't want to hear anything mean. I think that you as a Cancer can empathize with that. All right, I'll see you guys next month.